George Galloway. Judita, where are you on him?
I find George Galloway disturbing but fascinating in a very dysfunctional way because, like the point you've made, he's a very emotive orator, and a lot of successful politicians can motivate a lot of people by saying the right thing the right way and the wrong thing the right way, but in a compelling way. And he has the ability to do that. And what I think is most potentially threatening about him and the position he's building for himself is that at this point in time in society, there's a lot of people who will speak offline, who will speak away from a camera and say, I feel suffocated, like I can't question things, I can't challenge things, I can't express an opinion. It doesn't come from a negative place. It just, as soon as I offend someone, I'm attacked. I can't exist like that. What he's doing is showing that I am somebody that's willing to stand at the forefront and take all the slings and arrows of my righteous crusade to speak truth to power and say what I think and what I feel. And that's very inspiring to people, even if they disagree with him. So, for instance, when you're thinking about the things he said that are anti-Semitic, when people talk, there are a lot of groups, LGBTQIA+, or pro-black groups or anti-racism groups, who say that if only we had the kind of power that the Jewish community has, that they can police the way people talk about us. You get someone like George Galloway who says the wrong thing, but in a way that speaks to the desire to have similar power and influence. You've got an audience. That's why he's dangerous. He knows how to speak to people, even if he's saying something they shouldn't be listening to.
Well, I mean, what one person might deem as that's something that you shouldn't be listening to, another person would deem, actually, this is information that I really desperately want to listen to, and actually I don't get to hear in the way or form or whatever it is in current debates. Many people are saying, like Keith says, I'll say this, Michelle, at least you know exactly where he stands, what he believes in. How many politicians can you honestly say that about these days? So that agenda, the notion that actually he's got a clear agenda, and you can disagree with that agenda all you like, it's each to their own.
Well, I do.
And that's fine.
Yeah.
But you know what he is, you know where he stands, what he stands for, and you can't say that a lot about a lot of MPs.
Well, sure, but you know what you're hinting at there, it wasn't quite what your point, but what you're hinting at is the fact we get fascinated with political figures who are, with no disrespect meant to them because they're across the political spectrum, rather marginal. We get very excited about George Galloway winning one seat for the Workers' Party. I confidently predict there'll be somewhere between one seat and no seats after the general election. Equally, you were just talking to your colleague Nigel Farage. No disrespect meant to him, different part of the political spectrum to Galloway. He may or may not return to frontline politics. The media will go bananas should he do so. They'll be fascinated by it. It will be well out of proportion with any actual results for the party that he may or may not lead, which will be somewhere between 0 and 1 in terms of a 650-seat parliament. So we get very, very interested in figures who are like that. Of course, part of the reason people will be interested in reform is their prospect of depriving the Conservative Party of seats they might or might not otherwise win. That's not even the case with Galloway and the Workers' Party. And they might make a difference about in a dozen seats if they, as in a dozen seats that other people might win, but not for themselves.
Well, in a second, we can hear from George Galloway, because this whole question about is he going to be a one-hit wonder, so to speak, in this by-election? Is he going to have more seats? I can tell you now, he passionately absolutely believes that he is going to get the seats. So let's just have a listen to that.
We've got 59 parliamentary candidates ready to go, and we'll stand in, therefore, 70 Labour seats and either defeat them ourselves or cause their defeat.
See, he's not mincing his words. Let's listen to how Keir Starmer responded to that then, shall we?
Galloway only won because Labour didn't stand a candidate. I regret that we had to withdraw our candidate and apologise to voters in Rochdale. But I took that decision. It was the right decision. And when I say I've changed the Labour Party, I mean it. Obviously, we will put a first-class candidate, a unifier, before the voters in Rochdale at the general election.
Right, so, we can have this debate in a second in terms of, how effective you'll think George Galloway's party will be on a broader election. But I found Keir Starmer's response there so egotistical. When he turns around and goes, George Galloway only won because we didn't stand a candidate, and he will genuinely believe that. I kind of think, who do you think you are? That somehow that election victory was yours, but because your candidate was an absolute wrong-un and you had to withdraw him because you picked the wrong fella, that was the reason that you didn't win. I think it's so egotistical. And so many people, Teresa, that are not massively politically engaged, this is one of the reasons why.
That's exactly the point I'm making, that George Galloway can potentially preach rhetoric that has a universal appeal for different reasons, even though it's not the agenda he's really standing on. Like you've said, just by the reaction to him, you've managed, that reaction will sway people that otherwise wouldn't care for Galloway, but are anti-Starmer, towards having some option that just isn't Starmer. And that's what plays into Galloway's hands. Because at the end of the day, you've got a situation where there are a lot of people who are apathetic, that are disenchanted, that are undecided, that are in the middle. And all they need is someone who looks like they have the enough motivation and enough ability to stand their ground to be effective, and that will galvanise them, and that's a dangerous thing. So thinking that George Galloway is something you can dismiss is not the wise move to make, because he has potential power in ways that you've underestimated.
It is not a role I anticipated for myself on this panel, but I want to try to be fair to Keir Starmer, because I think what he said may well be right, actually, and we'll tell, of course, come the general election whether or not he was right. I'm a Conservative, and I hope that Rochdale returns a Conservative, as I hope in every constituency. Nevertheless, I rather feel it's likely that, should the Labour Party get its act together, that George Galloway will enjoy 9 months in Parliament before the seat returns to the Labour Party, in which case what Keir Starmer broadly said would be broadly correct. After all, in the end, it seems to me that the Labour Party being at war to the knife in Rochdale with its ancient enemy, the Labour Party, was a big part of the reason for Galloway's success. The Labour Party, after nominations had closed, decided to disown its own candidate. Well, no one was realistically going to vote for them in those circumstances. The leader of that party is entitled to say, but for that, we would have done a lot better and perhaps won.
I've got to make the point as well, because I know some of you watching will have this opinion. There'll be many people, of course, many of them voted for George Galloway, that are so horrified and upset by the scenes coming out of Gaza. I mean, who can not be when you see all of these children being hurt or killed or orphaned or whatever? There's so many people there that are in this camp of ceasefire now. That's what they desperately want, and they will see George Galloway as being their kind of opportunity to bring and put pressure on to change the UK position on that, perhaps.